Welcome back to Narrow Path Doctrine. My name is Jim. We are doing a deeper dive into the book of Jude. It is just a small epistle, a one-chapter epistle just before the book of Revelation. We're currently in verses 12 through 15. Now, in these verses, the apostle continues his intense denunciation of the false teachers that were infiltrating the church. He uses vivid imagery to describe their destructive nature, providing a warning about their behavior and the judgment that they will ultimately face. He then references prophecy to emphasize that God's judgment on such people is inevitable. Let's have a listen to Jude 1:12.
These are spots in your feasts of charity, when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds. Trees whose fruit withereth, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots.
Now, the deeper dive here, these are spots in your feasts of charity. Jude refers to the false teachers as spots in the love feasts, or the agape feasts, which were meals shared by the early Christians, symbolizing fellowship and unity. The word spots can also be translated as hidden reefs, suggesting that these individuals are like unseen dangers lurking beneath the surface, capable of causing shipwrecks. Their presence corrupts the sacredness of the Christian fellowship. Now, the deeper dive application, false teachers infiltrate the community of believers, presenting a danger to the spiritual well-being of those in the church. Their hidden motives and corrupt behaviors pollute the love and the unity that should characterize Christian gatherings. Feeding themselves without fear, these individuals partake in the meals, but their only concern is actually feeding themselves. They are self-serving and lack any fear of God. Their presence at the feasts is marked by selfishness, and they exhibit no reverence for the sacredness of the community or for the God that they claim to serve. We see that an awful lot these days with a lot of so-called pastors out there. Now, the deeper dive application, they represent spiritual leaders or teachers who exploit the church for personal gain or pleasure without any sense of accountability to God or others. Believers are warned to beware of those who serve themselves rather than the community and ultimately God. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds. Jude uses a metaphor of clouds without water to describe the false teachers. In an agrarian society, clouds are a sign of hope for rain, but when clouds are without water, well, they bring no life-giving nourishment, right? They are carried by the wind, meaning they are unstable and unreliable. Now, the deeper dive application here, false teachers promise spiritual refreshment and life, but they deliver nothing of substance. They are driven by their own desires and are not anchored in the truth. Just as clouds without rain disappoint the farmer, well, false teachers disappoint those who follow them and trust in them. Trees whose fruit withereth, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. These individuals are like fruit trees that have withered and are barren. Their fruit, the results of their teaching and lifestyle, is non-existent, really indicating their spiritual deadness. Twice dead emphasizes their complete spiritual barrenness, dead in both root and branch. They are completely uprooted, indicating that there is no hope of revival or restoration. In the deeper dive application here, false teachers do not produce any lasting fruit or evidence of a transformed life. Instead, they are spiritually dead, devoid of the life and vitality that comes from a genuine relationship with God. The image of being plucked up by the roots points to their ultimate removal and judgment by God. All right, let's have a listen to Jude 1:13.
Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever.
Now, the deeper dive here, raging waves of the sea foaming out of their own shame. Jude likens these false teachers to raging waves of the sea. Now, in Scripture, the sea often symbolizes chaos, unrest, and disorder. See Isaiah 57:20 for reference. The waves they produce are tumultuous, and their actions bring turmoil and instability to those in the church. The foam they cast up represents their shameful behavior, which becomes evident over time, much like how the sea leaves behind foam after a storm. Now, the deeper dive application: false teachers are like destructive forces, stirring up confusion and conflict. Their behavior may be hidden for a time, but eventually the shame of their actions becomes evident, like the foam left behind by the raging seas. Wandering stars. This term, wandering stars, refers to celestial bodies, likely comets or meteors, that move erratically, unlike fixed stars that provide reliable guidance. In ancient times, stars were used for navigation, and a wandering star would mislead travelers. This metaphor highlights the instability and deception of these false teachers. They lead others astray with no reliable direction. The deeper dive application here: false teachers, like wandering stars, are unstable and unreliable. They do not provide true spiritual guidance, but instead lead others into confusion and error. To whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever? This phrase refers to the eternal judgment awaiting these individuals. The blackness of darkness symbolizes the utter separation from God and eternal punishment in hell. This is the fate of those who persist in rebellion and falsehood. In the deeper dive application here, Jude warns that the final destiny of these false teachers is eternal judgment in the blackness of darkness. This serves, of course, as a sobering reminder to those who persist in leading others astray. They will ultimately face God's wrath. All right, let's move on to Jude 1:14.
And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints.
Now, the deeper dive here: Enoch, the seventh from Adam. Jude quotes a prophecy attributed to Enoch, a righteous man who walked with God. See Genesis 5:24 for reference. Enoch is described as the seventh from Adam, which establishes his antiquity and authority. Jude's reference to Enoch's prophecy is drawn from Jewish tradition, specifically in the book of Enoch, which was a non-canonical book at the time, right? The deeper dive application: Jude appeals to a well-known tradition in Jewish literature to emphasize that the coming judgment of false teachers was long foretold. Enoch's ancient prophecy carries the weight of historical and divine authority, highlighting that God's judgment on the ungodly is certain. Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints. Enoch's prophecy points to the second coming of Christ, when the Lord will return in glory with 10,000s of his saints, likely referring to the angels or redeemed believers. This emphasizes the majesty and power of Christ's return as he comes with his heavenly army to execute judgment. The deeper dive application here: Jude's audience is reminded that Christ's return will be accompanied by judgment. This should serve as both a warning to the false teachers and a comfort to the faithful, knowing that justice will ultimately be served. All right, let's move on to Jude 1:15.
To execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him.
Now, the deeper dive here: to execute judgment upon all. Jude emphasizes that the Lord's return will bring judgment upon all people. No one will escape the divine reckoning, and every individual will be held accountable for their actions. This is a universal judgment that covers all people, especially those who have lived ungodly lives. Convince all that are ungodly. The Lord will convince or convict all who are ungodly. This means he will expose their guilt and hold them accountable for their sins. The repetition of the word ungodly underscores the extent of their rebellion. Their ungodliness is not only seen in their actions, but also in their words and in their attitudes. Now, there is fourfold ungodliness. Jude points out four aspects of the ungodliness of these false teachers: ungodly deeds, their actions are contrary to God's will; ungodly committed, they have persistently chosen to live in rebellion; hard speeches, their words are blasphemous and show a hard-hearted rejection of God; and ungodly sinners, their entire character and identity are rooted in ungodliness. Now, the deeper dive application here, Jude warns that all who live in ungodliness will face judgment. This serves as a solemn reminder that our words, our actions, and our attitudes all matter to God. Those who live in opposition to him will be held accountable, and their sins will be ultimately exposed. So in conclusion, in Jude 12 through 15, the apostle uses vivid imagery and prophetic warnings to describe the dangerous nature of false teachers and the certainty of their coming judgment. These individuals who infiltrate the church are like hidden dangers promising spiritual nourishment but delivering only chaos and destruction. They are compared to fruitless trees, raging waves, and wandering stars, symbols of instability, emptiness, and impending judgment. The prophecy of Enoch serves as a reminder that God's judgment has been foretold from ancient times. Christ will return with his saints to execute judgment on all who live in rebellion against him. This passage emphasizes the seriousness of ungodliness and the inevitability of divine justice. All right, that will wrap up this episode of Deeper Dive. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up, share it with others, and if you have not subscribed as of yet, please do so and click the notification bell to get updates when the next episode in Deeper Dive on the Book of Jude comes out. So until next time, remember, true doctrine fuels a living, breathing faith. God bless.